Hello, hello. I'm very glad you're here. Sorry it's such a small room and we're so cramped, but it's going to be a wonderful seminar. This is akin to the seminar that we did last week, and it's on portfolios. Carol Redwine and I are very glad that you're here to support these. These will be good for your own portfolios to say that you went to these seminars. Kind of want to introduce who's going to be here today and who's going to be speaking for you. This is Amy Kavanaugh, and she's from Ferris State University, and she's going to speak first on exactly what a portfolio is, what should go in it, electronic versus hard copy. Then we have Liz Jones, and she actually is going to speak to you about how she got her job using her portfolio and how you can showcase yourself during an interview. And then we have Tom Priest, who's going to speak, and he is actually a principal at a school in Grand Rapids, St. John Vianney Catholic School, and he does the hiring, and so he sees portfolios, and he's going to tell you what stands out, what makes somebody look spectacular, and what he hopes not to see in a portfolio. So let's welcome Amy, and she's going to get started.
I have some handouts here for you, so it goes along with my purpose is to go over the purpose of portfolios and then what exactly you should put in your portfolio. And I want to start by saying the portfolio is for you, the teacher education student, but it is also for us, the teacher certification granting university, in that we use it for our own record keeping as well. It's used for accreditation purposes. You can imagine when you're graduating lots and lots of teacher ed students, we can't possibly keep your 3-ring binders in a room for review. That room would have to be humongous. So what we've gone to is an e-portfolio, or it could be called a digital portfolio, and what that is something that's online. And Ferris uses LiveText, and that's something that you'll purchase as you get into the professional education courses. You purchase access to this site where you create your portfolio for us as a university and also for you as you go out into the field. And you buy it, and it's yours for about 5 years. So you can use it out in the field when you're a practicing teacher as well. You can use LiveText, the site, for your portfolio and also for lesson plans. It also gives you access to United Streaming, so you can use a multitude of videos, short clips of segments that pertain to the lessons that you're planning. So you use LiveText for your portfolio as well as your lesson planning. The purpose of the portfolio is to show how you've transformed into a reflective teacher, and how you've also demonstrated growth toward the provisional teacher certification standards. So in the state of Michigan, there's standards that teachers are supposed to meet once they graduate. And LiveText makes it really easy for you to access those standards so you can demonstrate how you've, for instance, demonstrated growth in communicating with parents and other colleagues on student progress. So let's see. The handout shows that we use, as a university, your portfolio for our accreditation with TEAC or NCATE standards. And also it's required by us because the Michigan Department of Ed says that if a teacher graduates and goes out into the field and then ends up struggling, we need to remediate for that teacher. So we would have to pull up what you created while you were a teacher ed student and show how we would help you to continue your growth. So you developing as a teacher is a school district's responsibility, but it's also the teacher ed institution's responsibility. So those are the purposes. Also, it may be to help you get your job, whether it's the e-portfolio or the 3-ring binder. We're finding that students are still creating both, the hard copy to take to an interview as well as the e-portfolio for your own record keeping. Things that go in the e-portfolio. Ours is set up, these are the exact components. If you end up at Ferris, these are the exact things that will go in your portfolio. And we have this conceptual framework of TEACH, which is transform, experiential, assessment-driven. It's my A, right? C is holistic. And I can't think of the C right now, probably because I'm being recorded. But You have to show in a narrative how you've demonstrated growth towards our conceptual framework. You are expected to use your content area coursework, so any classes that you took toward your minors at GRCC, papers that you created or lessons you created, you would put those in the portfolio, as well as things that you do in the professional ed Ferris courses. We would expect that you'd also, so there's a narrative, then you show examples of your content area knowledge, examples of you working with children, so that would include pictures, people scan in certificates that they've earned, whether it's through church or through the community. Those also go in the portfolio. And it's great. It's just no attachments really for the most part. You just click on it and you can see right away what that student can do and has done. We work on the portfolio beginning in the level 2 courses. So you purchase your live text, and then the idea is when you go through all of level 2 and level 3, you're building that portfolio. So you don't come in one class and create the portfolio and then it's done. You're, of course, going back and revising and adding to, for instance, your teaching philosophy, your resume as you gain more experience with kids, and also your content area knowledge. Lexi right here created her portfolio last semester. Do you have anything that you would think would be really important to include?
I would say, like, when you have field placement in a particular classroom, like what you guys will and whether you're in the child development program or if you're in the elementary ed program here through Ferris, you'll get experience in different school systems, and it's important to also include those photos or just list what you did at that placement too. It kind of shows that you're volunteering and you're out in the field and that kind of thing. So.
I think that's important to point out too, what you do while you're there. So it's not about, I have 140 hours of experience with kids. It's about, while you were at Godfrey Lee, what did you do with those first graders, more specifically? That's what would go in the portfolio. So you start with, there's an introduction and welcome piece where you just can tell about yourself. You can include a picture, that kind of thing. Professional qualifications, that's where you put the mission and purpose of the portfolio. It's likely to, because you want to get a job and show your growth. The resume, and I just bulleted components that students in the past have included in their resumes. And I think that kind of mirrors my own resume too, things to include. Professional experience, you want to definitely include anything that's child-oriented, things that you've done with kids. But of course, any other jobs that you've held should be there too. And community involvement goes for any volunteer work. It could be church work, any committees you've served on while you're at GRCC, any presentations you've been to. Those things should go there too. The teaching philosophy is something I know you start when you're at the community college, and then it's something that you revise along the way. Level 2, and then when you go on to your pre-teaching and your student teaching, that teaching philosophy changes. So it's never written in stone. I think also the teaching philosophy can show a school district how well you are able to communicate, and it's a good writing sample. You may even go to an interview and they may ask you to actually write a sample letter to parents, like an introductory letter, just kind of on the spot, and it's good practice. And then classroom management and organization, that's something that's near and dear to my heart. Exactly what will you work on with children in the room as far as before you can get to the academics? What are the rules and procedures in your classroom in the future? What kinds of rewards will you use? And then what kinds of consequences? And how will you come up with those? Will the children be a part of that process? So these are all things that we include in our portfolios at Ferris. And I was hoping to show you a couple samples, but if you know Lexi, you can ask her, and she can show you the LiveText site and her e-portfolio. So are there any questions for me? Okay. Oh, yes.
How much is the subscription to that website?
$100. 5 years. And then you can renew it. Once you are hired out in the field, you can use it because it is great. If you have internet access in your classroom and you want to use a lesson that you created when you were in college, you can pull it up and access the videos and all of that right in your classroom. And many classrooms today do have that capability. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Amy actually has to get to class, so yeah. Looks like she's leaving. Okay, next we'd like to introduce Liz Jones, and Liz is going to actually show you her portfolio and share with you how she got a job.
Hi, everyone. How are you tonight? Good? Okay. Thank you for having me here. I know you didn't personally invite me, but your instructors did, or the individuals that put on this seminar. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to learn a few things before you're out there doing that interviewing process, trying to land that position that 300 or 400 other people are also trying to land. So it would have been nice back a few years ago when I was going through the process of getting my teaching certification to have had seminars like this. That wasn't the case those years ago. But I started through my educational process at Central Michigan University, graduated with a a Bachelor of Arts in Business Education with a marketing emphasis. So I tend to look at things through that lens in regards to the marketing tool, and that's how I started to use my portfolio. But then, as I entered my student teaching, part of the list of projects that we were to complete, one of the bulleted items was portfolio, among others that we could pick from. I chose the portfolio, quite frankly, because I thought it was the easiest project to do. It's pretty busy during student teaching, and I thought, well, I can come up with some samples of my work and a few certificates and throw them in a binder. But I have to tell you that it has been the most valuable tool that I could have ever put together, because it's what I believe has gotten me the positions that I've gotten over my, few years of teaching, let's say. But have been in education over 20 years, have had various positions within the educational field, most of which have been through progression from one position to another as I've gone up. Taught 10 years of marketing in the classroom, went back and got my counseling certification, did another probably 8 to 10 years of counseling, and then moved into a consulting position. And currently I'm a career development consultant for Kent ISD and provide a lot of different resources for all of our school systems here in the county. But with that, each time a new position kind of came on the horizon or I was asked to apply, I would dig out my portfolio, look it over, and do the updates that I felt were needed for the position. So that's one key area, I'd say, is to make sure as you're putting your portfolio together is to tailor it to the position. Don't just do it once and then, take it each time. You need to really look at it each time and update it for what you're going for. I've tried to put together a little list here of portfolio as a marketing tool. Like I said, when I started with it, there really wasn't guidelines, there wasn't standards. It was like a paragraph description of what to do for this project. It wasn't as elaborate as it is now. And as the person that was just here from Ferris mentioned, in terms of there are certain requirements, it sounds like if you go to Ferris for your program, that you'll have some requirements to complete to get the portfolio done as an assignment. You're not necessarily going to take that assignment portfolio onto the job interview. Most likely what you'll do is have a interviewing portfolio. So you want to have some sort of a collection agent, a collection box for all of the different pieces of information that you're going to accumulate over the next few years while you go through your degree. Because then from that collection, you can pick and choose what you want to put in your portfolio. And also, if you come up with a collection system, you're going to keep those items in good condition, pristine condition, actually. Because really, how do you want to be perceived in that interview setting? Someone with coffee-stained pages, dog-eared certificates, wrinkled up documents. Probably not. You want to have it in a nice shape. And so whether it's a file folder, a Sterilite tote kind of box, whatever system you come up with, something that you can just, literally throw the documents in so that they'll stay nice. Okay, then you can pick and choose what you want out of them. Excuse me. For putting the portfolio together, I found the 3-ring binder was the best system that worked for me, and also used page protectors. Learned by error, actually, that in using the 3-ring binder, do not 3-hole punch your certificates, your awards, your resume, anything along those lines. I mean, resume you can reprint, but it's pretty hard to get another original copy of a certification or a certificate or an award. So if you use sheet protectors, one, it keeps it in nice condition, and two, you can change it around in the portfolio so that if it was, on the front page one time, it can be on the back page another time. If the 3-hole punch, you've got holes on both sides if you change it around. So make sure you use the sheet protector format. You also want to look at how you're going to put your portfolio together. Mine is in a chronological format in terms of historically. It's from when I first started my student teaching until the job that I have now. You may want to do that same format, or you might want to highlight certain areas of expertise. It depends on your level of education. If you're in elementary education, perhaps you want to have sections by the different subjects that you're degreed in, or by various experiences and things along those lines. So you need to decide your format of what your portfolio is going to be. And then you want to just get going on putting that initial portfolio together. And I say initial one because, again, you want to make sure that you change it up each time that you're going for a position. Don't do the same thing over and over again. Just to briefly kind of go through mine a little bit. Can I have you hold this? I feel like Vanna. Pictures are great. I didn't do as much with pictures probably as I could have when I first started off with mine. Again, not many guidelines and that sort of thing to go along with, but I did just always keep a picture of the first class I student taught with. I did decide to include my resume. You can choose to do that or not, depending on the job you're going for. Of course, make sure it's your most up-to-date resume when you go for that actual interview. I did decide to include my transcripts. I thought they spoke well of me and the work that I did in my schooling years, so I kept that. My counseling license, after I got my counseling license, decided to put that in there. The one that I have in here right now is not the most recent because I have to have that posted on the wall for my counseling practice, but I keep the space saved in here in terms of where I would put it in there. And then I have a variety of different letters that I've received over the years, letters from people I've worked with, presentations that I've done, organizations that have had me come and speak, different pieces. So that just sort of, it gives you a background of information, or it gives the person looking at your portfolio an idea of the different ways you've been involved, not only in the education community, but in your outside community as well. I happened to publish some work, so I included those in there as well. And then different times, different things that you get involved in, you usually get some sort of certificate that says, you participated, or, thank you for being here, something along those lines. Feel free to put those in there. Not necessarily every single one, okay? You don't want to overburden or overload your portfolio, but certainly pick and choose different things that will highlight different areas. I also included different news clippings if I happen to show up in the newspaper somewhere. It just sort of shows that you were out there doing something. There's one in here. I don't know if I can find it real quick, but there was an arrow. Here it is. I served on an evaluation team for a school system, and instead of just showing this in here without an explanation, decided to highlight my name. So that shows that, yep, that was about me, and it was in a team kind of effort. So you kind of show that teamwork skill, which is one of those key areas. And so again, thank you letters, certifications, different certificates, all types of different pieces is what can go in your portfolio. At the top there, I forgot to mention, keep it simple, keep it small. 1 inch to 1.5 inch binder at the most. In fact, mine's a 1.5 inch, and sometimes I think that might be too big and too bulky. I'd probably go down more to a 1 inch. Nobody wants to see you walk in with a 3 to 4 inch ring binder. Okay, they're going to be scared that you're going to go through that page by page. So keep it small, keep it pertinent to the position that you're going for. And I feel it's necessary to stay with the professional colors of interviewing, either a black or a blue. Okay, if your field is more the creative arts and that kind of thing, or visual and performing arts, then you might want to go more of a brightly colored, binder to sort of show your flair for your area of expertise. But all others, I'd say kind of that black or blue with that. Let's see. How I used it specifically in the interview as a marketing tool, and again, partly from my background in marketing, I would take it in with me to the interview, and then I would set it down beside me. I didn't want it to be a distraction between myself and the interviewer. And really, when I started using the portfolio, it wasn't very well known. Portfolios were more for people in the acting field, okay, or the modeling field, or the artistic realm, your interior designer, those kinds of things. They would bring portfolios, but not educators. That wasn't really that well known. So I kind of had the benefit of being one of the few that might bring one along, where you might be in the situation where everybody brings one along, or that it's expected. But what I would do is put mine down on the floor, again, so it wasn't a distraction, go through the interviewing process, answer the various questions, and then I'd always make sure that I had a question or two to ask them, interviewers like that. And then at the end, usually when I was leaving, shaking hands and that sort of thing, that's when I would present my portfolio and leave it with them, okay? And I did that for several reasons. One was to let it speak for me when I wasn't there, because I'd left it up to the interviewer in terms of whether they chose to go through it or not. But sometimes you only have a short amount of time to answer a question or elaborate on something. So the portfolio then it elaborates for you in your absence. So that was one reason why I would leave it at the end. Also, I like to get back in front of the interviewer before the decision is made, and so I would always let them know that I would be back the next day or perhaps the day after to pick my portfolio back up. That would allow them to circulate it around if they wanted to, or look at it again at their leisure, or just leave it on their desk. I didn't really know what they were going to do with it. I just offered the opportunity. Sorry, it's a little dry and warm in here, but then when I would come back in and get my portfolio, again, it was a way for me to get back in front of the interviewer to allow other questions. If other questions came up during them looking through my portfolio, it gave me a chance almost for a second impromptu interview. Okay, so that was the other reason why I would leave it with them. And most of the time, actually I would say all the time, I've landed the position by using the portfolio, taking my portfolio with me. And I think now it's really one of those things where employers expect it. Yeah, so, any questions? I would say just about every time someone would make some sort of comment about something that was in the portfolio. Yeah, which was kind of helpful to say, okay, it's actually being used, kind of thing.
Did you develop the trick of leaving your portfolio behind immediately as you got your first interview, or was that subsequent interviews later?
It was sort of the first time with the interview, because when, like I said, as the assignment was given, there wasn't really guidelines in terms of what to do with it after you put it together, and it was sort of, for me, an afterthought as I got ready for an interview of, oh yeah, I've got that thing I put together. I should take that along with me, and then from there decided to leave it and go like that. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Tom.
Okay, now I'd like to introduce Tom Priest. And you're going to notice right off the bat that Tom's going to contradict some of the things that Liz says. And that's good because we're trying to give you different people's opinion because there's no set box for a portfolio. So it's good to hear differing views. So welcome.
Except I'm a principal, so I'm right. So, no, we discovered this last week. Liz got up and talked about everything. She, from that side of the table, said, here's what I do. And then I came up and said, well, here's what I look for. And they didn't match 100%. But what I did, just keep it simple. You will get my notes, but not until I'm done talking because I don't want to compete with myself on paper. So you'll get them. You don't have to write anything down. But just a list of 10 things that I look for in a portfolio. This is my 9th year as a principal in the Catholic school system in Grand Rapids. Right now I'm in Wyoming at St. John Vianney. It's one of the bigger Catholic schools in town, but biggest school I've worked at. Every year for the past 9 years I've interviewed and I've hired at least 2 to 3 people. So, closer? Okay, you can just yell. Oh, then I can't talk if I can't talk with my hand. So I've probably interviewed over 100 people for different teaching positions over the past 9 years. So I have a little experience sitting down with people, and I've learned some things. I used to interview just by myself. Now I interview with a committee of teachers just because professionally I think it's easier to have the people they're going to work with. I like somebody, and then I introduce them to the crowd, and they go, how'd you pick them? So to have them in on the decision really works well. So I think when you go interview, having your portfolio is a great asset because you're going to be dealing with 4 people, 8 people. My last position I interviewed for, I had 12 people sitting around a table throwing different questions at me, and they just rotated. Well, I brought a portfolio with me, and that went around the table, so at least the ones who weren't asking questions were finding things out about me, building up to the next question, and actually had to do with something that they saw in my portfolio. So it helped me because I got questions that were specific to my experience instead of tell me what you like about teaching or being a principal or something generic. So, but out of the top 10 things for your portfolio, of course, you want a resume. The idea of having it look professional, I agree with Liz on that. You want to have it stand out, but if you do it too flowery or too wordy, wingdings instead of a normal font, it's going to be off-putting to whoever's looking at it. You want it to be easy to read. You'll have a chance in person to express kind of more who you are, but keep it professional looking. You want to do things that any experiences you have, and probably not so much in the teaching area right now, but any job you've had that has something similar to teaching, you want to really draw upon that. If you worked in a daycare center, or you were a nanny, or you worked in a restaurant as the dining room manager, well, you've had positions of power, and you were scheduling people, and you had all these things you need to do as a teacher. Make that connection. Don't leave them off your resume, because then you're just going to have a big blank spot where, what kind of work experience have you had? So when you're first starting out, you need something there. Take the things you've done and find out how you can connect it to what you would want to do in the classroom. So everything's worth something. It's worth mentioning. When you're on your second or third teaching job and you're still talking about your paper route, then people ask questions, what happened in between. So I had a paper route, but I don't mention that much anymore. So references, you'll definitely want references. 3 or 4 of them is great to have in your portfolio somewhere, usually attached with your resume. You've been in teaching placements, you've had your student teaching, you've been involved with different teachers and administrators. Get them to write you a letter of reference. If you haven't messed things up too bad and you've done a pretty good job, and there's no reason to complain, that they have no reason to not write you one. I know people who, here's my reference letter. Can you format it more? But what you've seen out of me. But here's a couple samples that I've been given. Give them a little direction. If I get asked for a reference letter, first I go, one more thing to do. But I'm willing to do it because people are going out of their way to ask, and I know professionally, if I've had a good experience with them, why wouldn't I do that? So, but have references, and you want to back that up with letters of recommendation. Don't use the same people. Don't have 3 reference people and then use them as your letters of recommendation people. That looks suspicious. You can't find more than 3 people to say nice things about you. It makes me wonder, and you'll see, I'll see that you've been at 3 different schools, but only one school has anybody saying good stuff about you. Was that the last school you were at? Was that the first school you were at? Try and pick and choose people from different areas of your life, different experiences, where some of them will be on your reference list, but some of them will be writing those letters of recommendation. And then, it's up to me if or whatever. Everyone's opinion is worth finding out to me, so it's not just I go. That, and here's what I do now. Don't spin it too much negative with it. Just have something positive to say. Yeah, that was rough, but that was 3 years ago, and my experience since then, and I figured things out. If you can explain it in a way that, it happened back then because I was young and foolish or whatever, and now I'm so much wiser and I have all this experience behind me, that's something that, okay, you can admit to something not being perfect, but you've made some progress since then. So don't be afraid of something not being perfect in your portfolio or resume. Everybody's got something they don't want to put on the cover. So your education philosophy, a lot of people have a nice little quote that gets a lot of attention. Pick something nice and interesting, but don't go into every single thing you do to manage a classroom. That's why you're there in person. So just have a couple, maybe one paragraph, couple brief ideas of this is kind of the theme for how I run my room. Everyone deserves respect, or the classroom, the kids make the rules, and we try to stick to 5 to 10 rules, and they need to be about respecting other people's space, and when we turn in our homework, just something. And then you'll get the questions. Well, tell me about your homework policy. What have you done? Well, I was in a 3rd grade. I was in an 8th grade. I had a similar policy, but here's what I did. That doesn't have to be on paper. That's more the conversation of being there in person. So, but just give a little nugget of what you like in the classroom. Don't fake it. Don't come up with a classroom policy that sounds great on paper, but if you get the job, you're never going to live up to it. That's disappointing. That gets spotted pretty quick. If you talk about how rigid and structured and your high expectations, and then you run your classroom and it's a kind of this, big free love atmosphere type of free-for-all, the principal's going to say, boy, you're not really the person I thought I hired, and then maybe you make it through that year, but getting to year 2 might be more of a struggle. If you're not rigid and structured, that's fine. Just, this is the type of person I am in the classroom. And there's as many principals who want the rigid, structured teachers, and they're the other ones who want the ones who meet kids on their own level and have that kind of free-flowing atmosphere. So don't be afraid to say who you are. Examples of lessons, put some lessons in there. If you are going for younger grades, have some, younger grade lessons. If you're going for middle school or high school math, make sure you have a, 5 days worth of lessons where you can show you introduced a subject, got through the basics, brought it up to the next level, and how you would test on it and so on. So it doesn't hurt to have that in there. And like Liz said, mix and match. If you're going for a middle school position, put in the stuff that makes you look good for middle school. If you're going for elementary, okay, that's a good example of how you run things, but do you have some younger experience? Put that in there. Photos, bring in photos. Digital world, you can get tons of photos any way you want them. Put them in there. And I like to believe that when you put in a photo of the kids you're working with, where'd you work? Did you work inner city school? Did you work a school with a high amount of Hispanic families? Did you do a bilingual academy? Your pictures are going to do a lot of your talking. If you're standing there and you have, kids of all different colors around you, that's great. I mean, it's a positive, and you don't have to explain too much. If you worked at all, I work at a private school. Catholic schools tend to be primarily white. I worked at St. Francis, which is over by Garfield Park. We had, 20% of everybody. There was no, majority at that school. And my pictures of my time from that school, we had a nice blend of everybody there. Well, that's in my portfolio. It shows that I've experienced dealing with many different people, many different cultures, and so on. So, and our experience was the Hispanic community the last couple of years there really was exploding. So, how did we attend to that? And that's in my portfolio as well. But you don't have to explain too much. You don't have to convince anybody. They can look at the pictures and see who you've dealt with in the past. So, and that's always helpful. News clippings. I saw Liz had a news clipping. Any way you can get into the news, the good ways, not the bad ways. There's other news articles out there, but we like the good ways. And if you were involved in, test scores are up in the classroom you were in, that's great. Did you have a lot to do with it? Maybe, maybe not. But if your name's mentioned and you're a part of what went on, why wouldn't you claim your part in that activity? If you went on a field trip and it made the paper, if you did a charity fundraiser and it got, on a news report somewhere, get that in your portfolio, because as a principal, I tell my teachers all the time, if you're going to do something, contact the media and see if they want to come out and film it or do a story on it, because we're a private school, so we're always looking for ways that people know we're there and people are interested in joining us. We did Odyssey of the Mind last year. We went from 3 years ago, 2 teams. Last year we had 7 teams. All 7 teams made it to state. 3 of the teams made it to World. We got a lot of press coverage out of that. A couple different articles, a couple spots on TV8. No other Catholic school in the area did anything like that. 2 of my teachers started it and just ran it on their own. I walked into it, the program was up and running, but I got to be interviewed on the news. That was kind of nice, So principals look for that. So if you find a way to get it, put it in your portfolio and make a point of that. Yeah, I'm really proud of this project. It was nice. The press came out and did a story. These kids did this great job. You don't have to take all the glory, but the principal get the idea that you did the work for it. So. The DVD, the idea of having something electronic, and Liz and I, as far as the portfolio itself, I say don't leave it by your side. As soon as you get in there, hand it to the first person. Say, here's my portfolio. Why don't you guys start passing it around while we start talking about things? Because what happens in interviews I've noticed is that 40 minutes later, a half hour later, and the person, well, okay, thanks for coming in. Oh, here's my portfolio. I'm thinking of the next person. I'm thinking of, I got 3 more people to interview. Leaving it behind. The awkward part for me is if I have 5 people leave their portfolios behind, 4 of them are going to be unhappy when they pick them up. I don't look forward to that experience. So if you can do a DVD that has the majority of the interesting stuff from your portfolio on a DVD, and you can say, mail it back to me or take it and keep it forever, or if you don't hire me, can you keep it in a file in case another position opens up? Something disposable you can leave there. Last week in the conversation, the idea came up, and I would look forward to this, is can you get your portfolio there ahead of time? You got a week's notice, 2 weeks' notice for the interview. Drop off your portfolio. So if I read over your portfolio, suddenly I know you, and I don't know the other 4, and I have good questions to ask you, but I'm just shooting blind with the other one. I mean, it's a good way to kind of get your foot in the door. So I've never had it happen, but I would recommend that. Get it to them ahead of time, and then collect it after you interview, and then it removes that whole awkward, did I get it, did I not get it? It takes away the second chance to follow up on it, so I wouldn't know how to address that. But just the idea that if you have the means and a DVD, boy, you can leave a DVD with anybody and not worry about it. I would highly recommend it, and especially get it to them early so they can get to know you before they sit down with you. And then when interviewing, present the portfolio up front. Encourage everybody to pass it around and take a look at it. It doesn't have to be a 3-inch binder. Mine personally is a 3-inch binder. I think I got hired in spite of my portfolio, but it's somewhat dated at this point. Refer to selections as you talk about different topics. If someone says, boy, what's your, how do you do in science? What's your best science lesson plan? Oh, it's in the back. It's in the blue section of my portfolio. We did this environmental thing. Take a look at the pictures. It comes off well. You may come in for an interview for one job, and by the time in between you getting the call to come in and you coming in, someone else could have retired, someone else could have quit, someone else could have whatever. So they're not looking at you just for 3rd grade whatever. Maybe they need a 5th grade teacher too. And you might find that out sitting there for the first time. And if you have something kind of, up your sleeve where you can say, oh, 5th grade? Yeah, I have some 5th grade experience. Flip to this page, we'll talk about that. It happens a lot. It happens in the private schools because people jump ship to the public schools, and sometimes it's August or the end of the month, and we're scrambling to fill spots. So I would recommend you do that. Tab your selections for easy reference. If you're able to say, flip to the blue tab, go to the red, that's all my discipline stuff, whatever, that's real easy, and then you can do that across the table without people fumbling through and not really getting the benefit of your portfolio. Include examples of student work. Anytime you can do that, even if the art teacher I hired this year had her whole middle school year, every art project the kids she was dealing with on a DVD and left it with us. Here's every assignment every kid did for me last year. That's pretty nice to look at, a couple hundred finished art projects for middle school kids. She got the job. She definitely presented herself in a way that I felt comfortable she could get them through art projects and a variety of different stuff, and she just left it with me, no problem. And then I would say take your portfolio with you when you leave. Leave the disposable portion, but take the rest of it with you, and then you don't have to worry about it because maybe you have 2 interviews that week, 3 interviews that week. Hopefully you're getting from place to place, so that would be my advice. Everybody knows you have a portfolio. If you don't bring it with you, if someone shows up and I say, where's your portfolio? Oh, I didn't bring it. My first thing is, what's wrong with it? I know you had to make it. I know you've been working on it for 4 years. Why didn't you bring it with you? Oh, I didn't think it was good enough. I mean, you can't say anything that's going to impress me at that point. I forgot. Well, you're unprepared. It's not good enough. Well, then you didn't try. I mean, bring it, show it, have it worth showing. So don't skip out on it because you have to make one, right? Yeah, you're all thrilled to make one. I was thrilled to make mine, but so that would be my advice. And like I said, I have all this for you, but I know questions, right? We're going to do. Liz, do you want to come back up for questions? Or?
This is your chance to pick their brains for a minute. If you want to ask them some questions. A couple things that were brought up last week were like inappropriate things for a portfolio. Tom, you might want to speak on that a minute. Or just any like quick questions you have for either of them. Do you prefer electronic? Do you prefer paper? Go ahead. Anybody have anything you want to say? Tom, will you speak 1 minute on inappropriate stuff like the email on the phone and all that?
Yeah. If you have an original screen name, let's say a fun screen name that maybe doesn't look professional on the front of your portfolio, whatever that might be, I would recommend that you set up a nice professional-looking account, a Hotmail account or a Gmail account that, first initial, last name, whatever the designation is, that is your official way to get response back from your interview. So if you have something that is, Screaming Monkey 4000 and that's on front of your portfolio, maybe I don't want to hire Screaming Monkey 4000. And maybe you have a good reason for being that, but that's probably the fairest thing I can say. But just first initial, last name, and where to send it to. Then the last round of interviews I did, I emailed responses back to everybody. I didn't call anybody if they didn't get the job. I called the person who did, but everyone else, easier for me, less heartbreak for everybody to shoot off an email. Thanks for your time. We found someone who was qualified. We'll keep your resume on file for a year. But I responded to everybody electronically, and that's nice because everyone's waiting for the mail. Everyone's waiting for the phone call. It's a quick, less hurtful way to do that. So think of that. You want to be professional. And again, if you have a cell phone on there and your cell phone rings and you're out wherever and you just answer it like whatever, that's my first impression of me calling you back to offer you a job and you, what is it? I forget I'm calling people on cell phones. I don't think of that. I don't think they're probably at the grocery store or they're out with their friends or whatever. But if you don't recognize it or if you want to put in the school phone number so it comes up, hey, it's the school dummy, you'll know to answer it appropriately. So that just two things from last week's discussion that I think would help you maintain that professionalism. They'll get to know you once you get hired and everything's fine, I'm sure. But those two things would be kind of off-putting and, boy, we wanted to have you come in for a second interview, but now I'm not so sure, but, why don't you come in anyway? So those two ideas came up last week. But
I had one more. In terms of articles that you're going to put in your portfolio, one or two of a good thing is great. An entire collection of the same thing or something that highlights the same event is way too much. So if you've gotten several thank you cards for a presentation that you did in an elementary school, that's a great writing assignment that teachers do. You give the presentation and you get a thank you letter from every student. Don't put every student's thank you letter in there. One or two is great. That gives an idea of what you did, but it's not overwhelming to the individual.
And the ones that are spelled correctly, drawn neatly, if you're teaching third grade and all the thank you cards in your portfolio are a mishmash of these kids don't know how to spell and you're in that room, it could reflect poorly. Not that you're responsible for all that, but you couldn't even find one good card to stick in here. You got all the misspellings and the erasure marks and the hole in the back from going in through it too hard or whatever. So just pick those type of things, but you don't need 25 thank yous. We'll get the point real quick that you did something good, the kids thank you for it, and yes, I'm sure you got a whole pack of them. It was really hard for me to throw away, there's principal day, there's teacher day, and there's all these, and you get tons of cards, and I hold on to things, but I've learned that those just have to go. Keep one or two samples. So.
And I would agree with Tom in terms of that. With the advent of technology, there's so much more you can do in terms of that DVD, ahead of time, several copies, able to just leave it. It's disposable on their part. For me, I did like coming back, but can understand that perspective as well. Some of the things that we're starting to see out at the ISD, I brought, this is when we had several rounds of interviews this year, and a lot of people are starting to bring this type of portfolio with them as well. And we've had the electronic version too, but this is just the sheet protector cover kind of thing. And again, they just left it with us, right? I want to just say a couple of things that came to my mind as Tom was presenting in terms of references and resumes. I feel the portfolio is the new form of resume. There has always been that adage of, if you turn in a resume, kind of use nice paper, maybe a colored paper that helps it stand out in the pile. Well, guess what? Everybody's using colored paper now and nice paper. Okay, so some people have actually gone back to white because that's what stands out now. Same thing with a portfolio. When I first started, there weren't many out there, but now there are. So you've got to do something with yours that helps it stand out, but not outlandishly kind of thing. Also, with references, we know at the ISD that the references that are going to be in a portfolio are the good ones. You want to make sure that you don't ever burn a bridge with any situation, because we take we make a point of looking through the portfolio to see where a person has been, and then see who in the room on the interviewing team knows people in those other places, and we call references that aren't listed. So you want to make sure that you don't burn a bridge. That's huge.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody knows somebody, and if you had a bad experience, you may as well, again, if all your references are from this school and you spent 2 or 3 of your placements at that school, it's going to get noticed, and someone's going to call. You may as well say, boy, it was real rough at this school. I was in an area I wasn't comfortable with since that time. I switched grade levels. I feel I'm more of a middle school person now. And explain it up front. It saves a lot of phone calls, and it should be true too. So when they do get a phone call to someone who maybe isn't on your list, but everybody knows worked at the same building you were in, yeah, that person really struggled with the younger grades, but once they came back in the middle school format, wow, it was an easier fit for them. And again, I had a 2nd, 3rd grade placement as my long-term placement, and I took a 6th, 7th, 8th grade social studies position my first job. So, and I was hired because 1, I was a guy and it was Catholic school and I was the only guy in the building, but 2, just I expressed that I'm comfortable with. I had experience with all age levels, but just because my last placement was young, I still was welcomed into that other classroom. So. Yes, because people love volunteers, and if you've spent time with kids and you've given them instruction and you've shown them how to, certain skills, how to play, what are the rules, what respect is, what team player, all that good stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't. And if you do volunteer work or anything like that, put it on there, because that shows you commit yourself to things that matter. So even if you help with the food pantry at your church, or you've done a couple environmental things because that interests you, put it on there. And then it translates into, wow, what if you did that with the kids in your classroom? So all that stuff is worth putting on there. Oh, yeah. We had a unique experience where it was like we were being set up. Someone came in and she had a portfolio, but everything she talked about was negative. If she had just sent the portfolio, she probably had a better chance of getting hired than talking about it. And the problem was that she would talk about this inner city school, and the teacher was in her 28th year, and I work so hard, and this teacher was phoning it in, didn't even care. And these parents just drop off their kid and never even come in the building. And these volunteers, they don't care about it. To hear her talk, she was the only one holding that school together, and she was only there for 3 months. And just, her portfolio looked very nice, and everything was, in order and neat and well presented. But what came out of her mouth just, killed the portfolio, because you're like, I don't believe what's in here because I'm listening to you. And she was applying for a kindergarten position, and she wanted to see the classroom. So the kindergarten teacher, who was going to be her partner teacher, walked her to the classroom. Well, the rest of us, while she left, said, oh my gosh, can you believe what's going on here? So when they came back, we finished up the interview and told the kindergarten teacher we all agree she is the one for the job. And obviously, no. But she also called back and emailed back and said, can you tell me why I didn't get the job? Well, professionally for me to go down the laundry list of things she screwed up while trying to get this job, I'm not going to do that to myself, because then what if she interprets it as, ageism or sexism or some type of bias on my part that I, honestly, and again, the committee was nice, because it wasn't just my opinion that she blew it. I had, 3 other teachers and the partner teacher in there, and we all went, oh my gosh, I can't believe what just happened. So even though you have a great looking portfolio, come in with the right mindset. And again, nothing negative about where you've been, or boy, can you believe parents today? Boy, you know what? You're going to deal with them. If you get this job, you're going to deal with them, and no principal wants to worry about a teacher going to pick a fight with a parent who, yeah, maybe they're not the most supportive parent, but they don't need to hear it from first-year teachers. So, it's just one of those situations that she scratched her name off that list pretty darn quick. But that's nobody here would do that.
I just encourage you, as Tom said, and myself, in terms of the use of the portfolio, don't go in and page by page show off your portfolio. Allow the interviewing team to go through it on their own. Because if you go through it page by page, you're assuming that they have the time for you to go through it page by page, and you might just be shooting yourself in the foot on that one in terms of causing a lot of frustration on their part, because a lot of times interviews are set up half an hour apart, a lot of times 45 minutes maybe, to allow time in between for the one person to get out and the other person to get in without running into each other. So you don't want to take up time by causing frustration. You want to allow them the time to look through it. If they ask you the questions, that's great, but you want them to direct the interview, not you.
Well, and if you're impressive in the interview, they'll go long. Yeah. We do half-hour interviews, but if we get someone who, wow, everyone has tons of questions and it's just going great, that other person can wait because I think I found the person. So, we'll still go through the other interviews, and if we suffer by being 15 minutes behind for the rest of the night or whatever, that's fine. But you're going to get about a half hour, 40 minutes, and then there's going to be that buffer time so you don't run into whoever's competing with you. There may be a group sitting in the hall, who knows. But just the idea that if you're impressive and if your portfolio is all in order, then you'll get that extra time if it's needed. No one's going to say, wow, you sound great, but it's been a half hour by. So you'll get that chance to you'll at least be called back for a second interview, and then they'll set aside an hour for you or even more. Can you bring this type of stuff? Can you come in and teach a lesson? Can you come in prepared to talk about your communication with parents and how you do newsletters? And okay, scramble. When I interviewed for my position now, we had a snow day the day before, and I stayed home on my snow day, and I looked up all the letters I had sent home all year long, whether it was for someone being a bully or us closing school because of we had fourth grade, everybody's getting sick, so we shut down the school and cleaned the school. So any communication over a big deal that I could collect, I came in with a portfolio with 15, 20. Here's all the different ways I communicated with parents, and 3 of the teachers who now work with me were on that committee, and they were looking at it and they're just flipping back and forth. Look at this, because I knew from the principal leaving, who told me about the job, that communication was a big deal around there, that they really felt communication was lacking. She had been struggling with it. Anything you can do for communication was great. So that snow day, I think, really sealed the deal for me, because I had a chance to put, I added all that stuff to my portfolio, and it really turned out well. So.
I know, they did. All right, guys, let's thank them one more time because I appreciate it. Couple things before you leave. We so appreciate that you come to these seminars and hope that they're helpful for you. I'm going to speak at the next one, December 4th, and tell you what that's going to be on poverty in children. So we have someone coming from Access to come and talk about how you can deal with children in poverty and what effects it has. And Carol will tell you about the one on December 5th. Next time they're going to be both in the same week. It's going to be a Tuesday and a Wednesday because it's getting close to exams, and we didn't want to put them close to exams for you. Also, before you leave, please make sure that you signed in, and also Stacy's passing out little things that you can put in your portfolio saying that you were here. Let Carol tell you about the next seminar.
Like a certificate of attendance. Yeah. I would say that's all positive stuff. Again, don't spend 20 minutes talking about that you came and listened to us talk for 20 minutes, but to have it in there, and oh, good, you've done this. If they're really interested, they'll ask, but otherwise it's good padding to show you've attended different things.
The other thing they can do with those sheet protectors, if you do the 3-ring binder, is you can have several of them all in one sheet protector, so that and if they choose, then they can pull them out and look through all of them, but you're not taking up 20 pages in your binder with each one.
Or make one page that talks about all the 15 things you've been to and say certificates available for on request, or save some space.
Yes, we really do appreciate your being here, and I just wanted to say a couple of things. One is that you will be receiving an email from me. We have a mass mailing of everyone who has attended one of these seminars, and so you're going to be receiving an email from me letting you know about the next workshop. It's going to be tentatively done by a gentleman from HR in Grand Rapids Public Schools, and he's going to be talking about teacher diversity and job opportunities. But when we say diversity, we're not talking just race and ethnicity. There are a lot of different ways that we can be diverse, and so that's an important aspect, especially as you are reaching out to look at possible job opportunities. So he's going to be talking about that. I will send you an email and let you know what is coming up. The other thing is that for those of you who are secondary education majors, we are in the process of establishing a connection or a partnership with Central High School, which is just right up on Fountain in College. And so that's going to make it very easy for you to have access to secondary opportunities should the need arise in any of your classes or as part of your just generally needing some experiences with secondary education. So I will be letting you know more about that as well. Thank you very much. Have a very happy Thanksgiving.